Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Baumhauer's Victory Grill. Welcome to another edition of the Nick Saban Show. I'm Eli Gold. Christopher Walsh from BamaCentral.com is our special media guest. He is joining us up here, and Coach Nick Saban now getting himself settled in. Good to see you, sir. How are you?
Great. How are you?
I am well, thank you.
Good.
Everybody's doing well, and it's nice to see you here. I missed you last week. Chris Stewart was kind enough to fill in. I understand you and Vern Lundquist had some good stories to share last week, huh?
Mostly Vern's, but it was good. I love Vern.
He is a dandy. He really is. Christopher, it's great to have you with us as well. And why don't we just let you jump right in and ask the first questions.
Thank you. We're now getting to the end of the second month of the season, and I'm thinking this question with Josh Jacobs in line, but there's always players that kind of develop not only on the field but in terms of leadership. And who are some of those guys who are really beginning to kind of step up now at this point?
Well, I think the more experienced players, especially on our offense, really have an impact. I think Josh Jacobs is one of those guys. I think Damian Harris is one of those guys. I think both of our quarterbacks really have, a lot of impact on how they affect other people. Ross Persbacher is certainly a guy on the offensive line that has done a really, really good job. And, even though our receiving core is relatively young with mostly sophomores and freshmen and Jalen Waddle, they're all really good guys. They're all really hard workers. They don't require any attention at all, really. They're smart. They learn well. Defensively, I was really excited last week because I thought, Mac Wilson sort of stepped up and took some responsibility, communicated better, and I think everybody played a little bit better because of that. I think Deontay Thompson does that in the secondary as well. Shaheem Carter tries to do it. So we have quite a few guys, a core of guys that do it, but the one thing we've always been blessed with here is we've always had coaches on the field on both sides of the ball. We've had some really smart guys, and they had experience and knowledge, and they were very confident. And when you talk about guys like Rolando McClain, Dante Hightower, C.J. Mosley, even Sean Dion Hamilton was like a coach on the field. So we've always had guys that can make a lot of adjustments and make other players feel comfortable. And that's the one thing on defense we've missed a little, but I started to see it come around last week.
Now, you talked about Mac. He had 11 tackles, a sack, 1.5 tackles for loss. But, Coach, most of our audience, and including your host here, have not played the game. When you talk about, or when Mac talks about the communication that he wasn't doing or getting across, what exactly does he do? What is the communication? To what degree is he, if you will, in quotes, calling the shots out there on the field?
Well, Eli, that's a long story, but let me try to put it in simple terms. All right, so if we call a defense, whatever the defense is, there's always front adjustments that you make relative to what the offense does.
Right.
And a simple version of that would be anytime a team creates what I call a YY wing. In other words, there's a tight end, and then there's somebody else that can be a lead blocker on that side. Well, you want to adjust your defense that way in the run front because that's where they're going to probably run the ball, and you're probably going to be a little outflanked if you don't do that. So somebody's got to make a call to get that done.
Gotcha. And
then they may motion out of that, and then they make another call to get you back to what you started with. And in the secondary, you got the same thing happening with the safeties. If they're in a pro formation, you're going to play one coverage. If they're in a slot formation, which means both receivers are on the same side, you're going to play another coverage. And when that changes, you change that. Sometimes you rotate the secondary based on where the tilt is in the running formation. So all these things are recognition things, and they change very quickly, and they have to be coordinated. And if they're not coordinated, then you end up with bad plays, no run support, people fitting the runs the wrong way, and you're not gap sound. So when you communicate and everybody sort of gets it, then you have a better chance for everybody to be in the right place. So this is no one person's fault, and it's certainly not Mac Wilson's fault.
Sure.
He just happens to be the signal caller. And the way we play is it used to be, we used to give a signal. Like when I was a defensive coordinator in Cleveland, Pepper Johnson was a Mike linebacker. He and I had we were like we had 15 hand signals for everything, so nobody knew what we were doing. And, he'd call to the defense, so you had one signal caller. Now we play against all these no-huddle teams. All 11 guys out there have to get the signal from the signal caller.
Gotcha.
All right, and then you try to co-sign it with communication on the field, hand signals. Sometimes when we play, even at home, we can't hear on defense. They can't communicate, so they have hand signals that they're given to every guy. All right, and the corner, the furthest away from our bench, is the guy that has to see through 22 players to get the signal. And if somebody doesn't give him the signal on the field, sometimes that's where you have the most mental error. So there's a lot of communication. So if we ever call a blitz, all right, then it may be directional. You got to call Lucky, Ringo, Rip, Liz. I mean, we've got 15 different right-left words that mean we're going to run certain blitz paths or whatever. So we could have spent a whole hour on that question.
Now, if you have these signals, and like this Saturday, you're facing a former assistant, do you have to change the signals because you might normally have used the same stuff that you used when Jeremy was on your staff and Coach Rumpf was on your staff?
Yeah, well, that's a problem. But we do try to change them some. But, you also have to, you can disguise things and you can change things. And sometimes when you change things, who you fooling? You fooling yourself or you fooling the other guy?
Yeah.
I'd rather make sure our guys are doing the right thing, whether they know it or not. And then at least we can play our guys against their guys and see who has the best guys, rather than worrying about, signals. But there are a lot of people, especially no-huddle teams now, who are notorious, all right, for stealing signals.
Sure.
All right, and they have somebody that specifically looks at the signal caller on the sidelines. They try to put the call that you played with the signal that he gave, and at some point in time in the game, they figure they got it figured out. Mm-hmm. All right, so in the NFL, when I was a defensive coordinator, they used to film you. They would actually film the signal caller, which was me, and then they would put the film of my signal with the film of the game, so the next time they played you, they knew what your signals were.
Unreal.
So, Jerry Glanville used to have an old saying, if you're not cheating, if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying.
You ain't trying, yeah.
All right, but I'm going to tell you something. We never do that. I don't even want to know. I mean, we used to have a guy in Cleveland who was a really, really bright guy. I mean, really smart. He was an accountant by nature. He probably had 32 on the ACT. And he always wanted to steal the other team's signals. And I would tell him, I don't want to know. I really don't. It messes me up.
Gotcha.
Don't tell me it's a run. Don't tell me it's a pass. I mean, because I'm going to call what I'm going to call based on the situation in the game. And it's what our players have practiced, and that's what they're going to do. So it should work against the run, and it should work against the pass. All right, so I don't even want to know. So, and we don't do that at all. We don't even have anybody that looks at the other team's signals or tries to do any of that stuff. We just, sometimes you can worry about the other guy so much, and sometimes when you look at the film, it's usually what you do or what you didn't do that really cost you the game. Nothing about what they did.
Yeah.
So it is about us and what we do, and that's what we try to emphasize with the players. But we do try to change some things up so the other team doesn't know what we're doing. But we have so many signals, I'm not sure our guys could learn new ones. I don't know if I could learn all the new ones.
I hear you. Right, we have a gentleman here at Baumhauer's with a question. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. How are you?
Good.
Good. Coach, I'd like to know what kind of characteristics and traits do you look for in people when you're hiring coaches?
Well, first of all, I think the two things that I would say are most important just in general would be a person's character and their ability to communicate. I think those two things are probably right up there. Because, you have to be knowledgeable. You have to be a good teacher, and to be a good teacher, you have to have good teaching progressions, but you also have to be able to communicate. And you got to be able to communicate on a level where you can teach players, that are 18, 19 years old that they may never have been coached that way before or taught that way before. And I think they have to be somebody who can get along with the people on the staff and take ownership to do their job for what they're supposed to do. But also get along and be loyal to the other people on the staff and not criticize other people. And, I tell our coaches all the time, no sense in talking about the offense, no sense in talking about the defense, no sense in talking about special teams, because when we win, we all win. When we lose, we all lose. And pointing the finger at somebody else doesn't really ever do any good. So we want people who are going to be committed to doing a really, really good job. I kind of like obsessive compulsive people. I mean, that means you want to get it perfect. I mean, you want to get it right, and you're, sort of driven to have things a certain way. And they didn't have that diagnosis when I was coming up, but if they had it, I'm probably that way myself. So, like when I get up in the morning, I do the same thing every day. Turn the coffee on, let the dog out. Dog comes in, give him a bone, get my coffee, get my 2 Debbie cookies, put the Weather Channel on, sit in my chair. And if I don't do it exactly the same all the time, day doesn't start out too well.
I hear you. I understand totally. Thank you, sir, for joining us. Now our first phone call of the evening. It's brought to you, as always, by Alabama 811. Always contact 811 before you dig to know what's below. Call 811 or visit al811.com. Pee-wee in Grand Bay, Alabama. How are you, sir?
Doing well. Coach, how are you, sir?
What's up, Pee-wee? How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing all right. Coach, I wanted to try to give a couple of shout-outs here real quick. Y'all had already touched on one. But, our defense, the way that they played Saturday after Missouri scored their touchdown and cut it down to a 3-point lead, our defense really clamped down on them, and they didn't get a whole lot done for the rest of the game. And then also Quentin Williams being named the generic Player of the Week award. Just giving out some kudos to our defense. They played very well last week. Also, we had our second offensive lineman of the week for the SEC named in Jed Rick Wills. For 2 weeks in a row, we've been able to have that lineman named for the SEC. But the one thing that I really liked about this game, Coach, was a certain time in this game. When Jalen came out on the field and lined up in the slot to the right, did the little speed across and got the ball and threw the ball back to Damian. The next play he lined up to the slot and left and caught a little pass downfield 5-6 yards. But when he came to the sideline, the entire crowd, everybody that I could see, stood up and gave him a standing ovation. Probably the best one that I've seen in Bryant-Denny Stadium in a long, long time. When you hear that, when the players hear that, do y'all recognize any of that, or does that affect the team in any way? Or just give them a good feeling that we appreciate about what they're doing on the field?
I don't think there's any question about it. I mean, it means a lot to the players, the enthusiasm, the spirit. I don't think there's anybody on our team who deserves greater accolades and greater show of appreciation than Jalen because of what he's doing for our team in terms of staying here, being a part of the team, being a good teammate to others, supporting, being willing to do other roles on the team to get an opportunity to play. And he's still prepared and ready to go anytime we need him to play quarterback. And I thought he played very well when he went in the game in the second half when, we kept 2 out of the game when he got dinged up a little bit. So I don't think there's any question about the fact that the players really, really appreciate it. Look, the players may not show it, but they appreciate the Walk of Champions, all the people that come there and greet them when we come to the game. They really appreciate, the students coming out to the last game and being very enthusiastic. I thought the stadium, which I was disappointed in early in the season, but I thought the stadium for this Missouri game was like it should be and like we want it to be and like it used to be in terms of the enthusiasm, the crowd, the music, the songs, the way they supported the players. And I think that's what makes Alabama special. And if you don't do that, then, we're not special because they do it other places. And that's what players see when they come here, when we recruit them. So I think it's really, really important to the players. And even if there's no way that they really have to show our fans that, I can tell you how much they appreciate it.
2 wides left, 2 to the right, including Devontae Smith is in motion. Running back, Damian, they fake it to him. Everybody's covered. 2 and now delays. Loads up, has a man behind the D. Opening drive, opening passes, and a touchdown. Jerry Jeudy, 81 yards. Hello, have we seen this script before?
We sure have. Longest pass of the season for Tua Tagovailoa, completing it to Jerry Jeudy for another touchdown. As we welcome you back to the Nick Saban Show, Eli Gold, Christopher Walsh, our media guest. Man, you'd better be in your seat on time. You better not blink. You better not turn away, huh?
Yeah. Start of the game, here comes Alabama with the ball. Yeah, you need to be paying attention, and it's been very impressive the way they've started.
It's been remarkable. You know, I've gotten a lot of questions on talk shows. You know, is this the greatest offense? I can't compare. I'm not going to compare. And, you know, and how do you compare the great wide receivers to Julio Jones and Amari Cooper? You can't compare. You just got to sit back and enjoy them.
Well, and the other part of it is we're only a midseason.
Yeah.
You know, we got a long way to go. So that's a little presumptive, I guess I'll say.
Yeah. Tell me, on a weekend such as this, how much will you be writing for your website?
A lot.
Yeah.
I am notoriously the last guy out of the press box, and it's week in, week out. Whenever they kick me out in Tennessee, that's when I'm going to leave, and I will probably drive straight home that night. And then I'll get up the next morning and I'll do my game review and some other stuff.
So how many columns, numbers-wise, not number of words, but 5 pieces, 8 pieces, 10 pieces?
I think last week, and this is including the photo galleries we had, I think I had 13 things up on
Really?
the site. So, yeah, it was a busy evening for me.
Impressive. Well, the coach joining us back here on the stage, Christopher, so why don't you jump back in again, sir?
I kind of want to jump back into the hiring coaches question, and I've been wondering this for years. What was your first impression of Scott Cochran when you first met him?
Well, you know, Scott was a young guy at LSU who was really an intern in the weight room for Tommy Moffitt, who is still the strength coach at LSU, who was our strength coach that I brought there from Miami when we went there, however many years ago that was. And, you know, he's an enthusiastic guy. But I really didn't know him that well. I just knew that he did a good job and people liked him. And, you know, when we came here, he was actually at the New Orleans basketball team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I was looking for somebody who knew our program, who had been through the off-season program, the strength and conditioning program and all that. And I actually asked Tommy Moffitt, I said, who's the best guy we ever had that was your best helper? And he said, Scott Cochran. And I remembered Scott, and a lot of people remembered him that were on our staff, Kirby and a lot of the other guys that were both places. And it was a slam dunk and one of the best hires we've ever made.
He's kind of unforgettable.
It's very much so, but boy, does he do a great job. Coach, the first question from the Nick Saban Show blog on AL.com. This comes from Crowbar down in Dothan, Alabama. He says, hey, Coach, other than Miss Terry, is there anybody outside of the football building who you can pretty well expect to hear from after every single game? Any former colleagues or mentors who will call you with their assessment after a given ball game?
Well, I think I get a few texts.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the time I get a text from Dr. Rosen, who I talk to quite often, probably
Right.
as much as anybody outside, especially during football season. You know, but that's really, you know, about it. You know, sometimes some of the people that work in the office, you know, might text and say congratulations or something. But when you don't text and you don't send emails, which I'm very guilty of, neither one that I ever do, you don't seem to get very many.
Yeah, I hear you.
And then when you do get them and you don't respond, then you get
You
even
get even a
less.
few of them. I do have a question, though. I hated to see today that Robert Foster was cut by the Buffalo Bills, only caught a couple of passes in the first 6 games, along the lines of people reaching out to you. When somebody who you coached, whether it's Robert or anybody, gets cut, do you ever hear, even though you're busy and your schedule is crazy, do you ever hear from other NFL teams quickly saying, hey, what's the deal on this guy? Is it worth us looking at him? Do they contact you like that?
Yeah, I talked to an NFL team on my way to the show tonight about one of our former players, so it happens quite a bit.
Interesting. Let's go to the phones. Hartselle, Alabama is our next stop. Joe, welcome into the Nick Saban Show.
Hey, Eli.
Hey, Joe.
I ain't got to call in all year, but been to my grandson's football games on Thursday night. But anyway, Coach, the burning question I got for you is, and then this is assuming we win Saturday, what what brand cigars are we smoking this week?
You know, I don't like to talk about that, I'm not allowed to really partake because it's against NCAA rules to use tobacco in any way. So, and we've actually been reprimanded in the past for this tradition by some folks. So I can't make a comment about that, and I won't make a comment about that. I think that's something we should talk about after the game, not before.
And say a nice word about the late coach Jim Goosetree, who's that great tradition started with. Coach, to your right, a visitor here at the restaurant. Hello, sir.
Hey, Coach. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good to see you. So with the Auburn win last week, going into this week against Tennessee, how do you feel, what kind of challenges do you think Tennessee presents to you, now as opposed to, 4 or 5 weeks ago before the big win?
I think that in this game, because it's a rivalry game, you're always going to get a team's best. And I think that, our players need to understand that. Now, when you win a big game like they won last week, I think it gives a team a lot of confidence, and they probably see themselves as kind of giant killers now, in terms. So, but most of the time, whoever we play, we got to kind of change the way they think by how we play, and it won't be any different in this game. If you want to, be a champion, you got to pay the full price for it. There is no bargain. There's no buy one, get one free. There's no, you won last year, so you're going to win this year. None of that goes. You got to go earn it every day, every play. And there's 3 things that I think are really, really simple that are really important part of that. First of all, you got to give effort all the time and be where your feet are every day in practice in terms of everything you do, because that's the only way you're going to ever develop your skills, is you're on top of your game. And then the second thing you have to do is you got to stay focused and have the right kind of mental intensity all the time and pay attention to detail. And this is the thing that I think people struggle with the most. And for everybody listening out there, there was some study done that Dr. Elko told me about today, that we stay focused 47% of the time. That's average. So that means 53% of the time you're not paying attention. So you might as well not even be there. If we do that, that means half the plays we run in the game, we got 11 guys that can screw up at any point in time. That means we're going to have lots of screw-ups. All right, so we got to be way beyond that in terms of our focus and attention to detail, and you got to do it every day. And you got to do it every day in practice, because that's the way you create the right habits. And then when you're doing those kind of things every day, giving effort and staying focused and creating the right habits, then you affect the people around you in a very positive way. So all these things are what develops consistency in performance, as simple as it sounds. And you're not going to win a championship, you're not going to be a champion if you don't have those things, because there's no easy way to do it. And everybody's looking for shortcuts in this day and age. I mean, everything they do, looking for a shortcut. That's why, Amazon.com, I send 7 boxes a day to our house. I put an over and under. I bet over and under on the front door every day. How many boxes are going to be there? Because it's a shortcut. You don't have to go to the store. You don't have to go shopping. They bring it to you. Everybody's looking for an easy way. There isn't one.
Shall we bring you a microphone, Miss Terry, for equal time here? I hear you. Dog food, I got you. But let me ask you about the quarterback. Garantano, last year, 108 passing yards against Bama. He's not at all the same quarterback as he was last year. Just look what he did this past weekend.
Right. Well, he's very much improved, but I think this is typical for guys that are talented, which he's talented. This guy's fast. He can run. He's a good athlete. He's got a really good arm. He's got a strong arm. Mm-hmm. And he's in a system now where it looks like he understands what's expected of him in terms of reading things and that type of thing. So they made a lot of explosive plays. I think they caught 6 what I call 50-50 balls, like long passes where the receiver was basically covered, but he won the 50-50 ball. And they made 6 big plays, that way. And, it's because he has a strong arm and he knows what he's doing, and they got a good system. And if you show what you're doing on defense, they're going to try to take advantage of it. And He's playing very well. But I think they have good receivers. I really do. The combination of his development and their receiving core has made a lot of explosive plays for them, especially last week in the Auburn game.
And you're right, Callaway had a couple of catches for 55 yards, so they are very, very talented. Christopher, go right ahead, sir.
Well, you just kind of reminded me, talking about the focus and trying to be a champion, about your conversation with Kobe Bryant in the preseason. And I'm always really impressed with the speakers that you get, but that one in particular, how did you get Kobe Bryant to come to Tuscaloosa?
You know, he actually wanted to come. He really did.
Cool.
And we didn't even have to pay him to come. He came because he wanted to come. I mean, and we enjoyed having him. He did a fantastic job. The players loved it. And I think, you know, he's the epitome of a great player in terms of, yeah, he's got great ability. He's a great athlete. But he has all the right intangibles when it comes to competitive spirit, work ethic, discipline. Just unbelievable. Mm-hmm. I mean, he actually told stories that I thought one of the best ones was that he told was, you know, he said, him and Allen Iverson used to go at it, and Allen Iverson was a great offensive player, and he struggled to guard him. Mm-hmm. And Allen Iverson couldn't guard him either, but so they both scored a lot of points. And then one day, Allen Iverson says in the paper, he said, I can't stop him and he can't stop me. And Kobe Bryant just got so pissed about that because he said, I'm going to stop him. So he said he watched tape for 4.5 straight hours and actually timed, by the time Allen Iverson caught the ball, how long it was before he made a move. And he was bigger than him, so he would stay back until he made a move, and then he would move in on him, and then he could defend him. And he actually started defending him very well. But just to think that, just to be challenged by that one guy, that it wasn't good enough just to score 37 points against the guy. He wanted to stop him too.
That's why Kobe's great.
That's right. It was story after story like that was very, very interesting and very compelling, and it really shows why he's one of the greatest players ever.
Any chance you're going to get him back for the Noontime Basketball Association?
Well, that was one of the reasons we bought him.
Under pressure. Here he comes. Down he goes. He lost the ball. It's loose still and recontrolled by Alabama. Recontrolled by the Tide's Anthony Jennings at the 12-yard line.
Alabama's defense just swarming, and I'll tell you, they swarmed against a darn good quarterback. He's going to be good, the kid from Mizzou, but Bama just didn't give him time to work.
You know, it's been kind of interesting to see so many, you know, the teams that Alabama's faced so far are so proficient in passing and the quarterbacks, and this isn't to say anything negative against the guys that they're going to be facing, but it seems like there's almost like a transition right now. You know, it's like we've seen a lot of the passing attacks. Now we're going to be seeing some more running. It's going to be interesting, I think, in November.
It will be. The Nick Saban Show, presented by Alpha Insurance. For the best agents in the business, call Alpha. Eli Gold, Christopher Walsh, Bama head football coach Nick Saban. And our second question from the Nick Saban Show blog at AL.com, Mitch in Gadsden. He says, Coach, are the kickers the toughest position group for you to coach, as so much of their job is mental versus actual physical preparation?
Not really. I think that I think it's more technical with kickers. I think I always sort of a lot of people out there play golf, and you know how technical golf can be in terms of your swing and how you chip and how you putt, and sometimes you have a rhythm and sometimes you don't. But I think if you can stay, you know, technically into a couple, you know, benchmarks of what helps you be able to play well, I think kickers are very much the same way. I think also punters are. But I think when guys lose their confidence or get a lot of anxiety about making or missing, rather than staying focused on the technique of what it takes to make a good kick, that's when they really get in trouble. And we've had a lot of help with some of our guys, you know, from a psychological standpoint through the years, which has been helpful to me. I've said this before, you know, for years and years and years, I always said I want the kickers and the punters and everybody to be like everybody else on the team. I want them to go through the off-season program. I want them to go through scout team. I want them to do all this stuff. And, Dr. Rosen used to tell me, you're crazy, man. We don't want those guys to do that. Why do you want them to do that? They're different. They don't have to play 70 plays in the game. They got to go make one kick, like an assassin. You got to make one shot. All right, so it's a totally different mindset to do that, and they don't need to be doing all that stuff. So we've had some pretty good counseling through the years.
Sure.
That has been very helpful, to helping guys get better and develop the confidence they need. And I think Joe has gotten a lot better this year because of it. But our young punter has really struggled, and I think most of that is psychological.
Coach, next week is the off week, and you'll probably join us for a short bit on the telephone. The week after, our show will be on November the 1st, and that means we will have missed your birthday. So, if you look to your right tonight to celebrate your birthday a little bit early, just because of how the schedule has fallen, we have a beautiful birthday cake for you that is that has been lit. They've got a fire extinguisher there if necessary, but just kidding. Ooh, everybody, happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Coach Saban. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you.
This has become a tradition here, an annual tradition on the show, a beautiful cake. And, Coach, again, because of the way the schedule has fallen, we either had to do it today or after your birthday. So the happiest of birthdays to you, sir.
Well, thank you so much, but November 1st would have been fine. I'd have been happy with that. I'm happy to have another birthday, no doubt, but if you could postpone them a little, it doesn't.
Well, make a note for next year. Let's go down to Pensacola, Florida. Chris is on the phone. Hello, Chris. Good evening.
Good evening, Eli. Coach, how are you?
Good, Chris. How are you?
Well, happy early birthday, too. Coach, I'm a young coach, and just wanted some advice. I'm coaching some 7th and 8th graders, and I'm just now getting into, really coaching these young kids, and just really wanted some advice. We're playing in the playoffs tomorrow night against a very tough team, and just wanted some advice of what motivation I could give my kids tomorrow night.
Well, I think that what I would tell them is, I would say, look, guys, go out in this game and play one play at a time like it has a history and life of its own. And focus on what you have to do your job and take ownership for it one play at a time. And, wisdom is all about making choices to get what you want. And that means you got to take ownership for whatever it is that you want. And you got to do it together. And every word that you say, like, we want to give effort, and then just put together behind it. We want to play with discipline, and then just put together behind it. And whatever it is that you want to do, just put together behind it. Because when you're in team sports, you got to do it with other people. And everybody has to do it to be able to contribute. So, but the big thing that I would try to get the players to do in a game like this is, don't worry about the result. When we play in a national championship game, I always tell players, I say, look, don't worry about winning the championship. All right, worry about dominating your box one play at a time, every play in the game for 60 minutes in the game. And assume that you're going to be playing against the best player you ever played against. All right, and then just go play the game that way, and then when the game's over, we'll see what the score is. All right, so, but we're in such a result-oriented society now, all right, that it's hard for people to just stay focused on the process of what they have to do to be able to be successful. Play in and play out, down in and down out, game in and game out, however you want to look at it. But I think that's the thing that really makes you successful and gives you the best chance to be successful.
Good answer. Good point. Christopher?
Oh, just to follow up on that, who are a couple of guys that on this team really practice well, bring it all the time, and just really kind of stand out that way?
Well, Chris, I'm never satisfied. All right, so, I think that's the thing we all strive for. Mm-hmm. We all strive to try to be the best version of ourselves every day, every opportunity, every practice, every play, every game, and that's what we strive for. But I'm not sure that you ever quite get that, but I think it's the right thing to focus on to try to get it. And you know, we obviously have some players that do it extremely well. Some players give great effort, but sometimes their focus is not good and they make a lot of mental errors even though they're giving tremendous effort. We have other guys that seldom make effort, but they don't finish plays all the time. We have other guys that do a combination of the two pretty well. So I don't think this is something that you have an absolute. I just think you're working for a high degree of consistency in these areas. So, and the more players that we have that can do that, I think the better chance we have to be successful in the long run.
Is this where the leadership really kind of develops more than anywhere else then?
You know, I think leadership, and I've said this 100 times, comes from people. If people can't set a good example, if you can't be somebody that somebody can emulate, it's not one of those things like, you know, do what I say, don't do what I do. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of not. You got to set a good example. So if you're not willing to go out there every day and give effort, stay focused, do things the way you're supposed to, take ownership for it, care enough about other people to help them, if you won't do that, how can you really be a leader? You can say you want to be a leader, you can say you want to be on the leadership council and all that, but when it comes to leadership, it's the power of one. It's affecting one person at a time, one day at a time, and the multiples go up and then everybody's getting affected. So, and a lot of people don't want to take responsibility for that. They really don't. You know, they're worried about themselves and what they have to do, and they're glad to do a good job at what they have to do, but they don't want the responsibility of, I got to worry about somebody else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Hey, Coach, do me a favor. Let's talk a moment about Jed Rick Wills. Folks know him, but they don't know him. He hasn't gotten a ton of publicity. Now all of a sudden he's the SEC Offensive Lineman of the Week. Tell us how he's progressed this season.
Well, he's done really well. We knew that him and Alex were both going to be really good players last year. They both played some as freshmen, and they both turned into really consistent starters, which, you know, Jed Rick has played very, very well. I think he's got a lot of confidence. I think he's got good understanding. He's smart. He's physical. He's powerful, and he's got a good a bit of ability, range to play tackle. We were playing at guard for a while, and we finally got the guys settled into where I feel like it's the best opportunity, and he's done a really good job at right tackle.
Bama taking over on this turnover. Let's see if they can cash in. Play action fake. Quick throw near side. Devontae Smith around the cover man. He's on the near side. He's in. Touchdown. Cashing it in indeed. 13 yards. One play. Bama pads their lead again to 26-10.
3 receiving touchdowns for Devontae Smith this season. And, you know, if he can't go this weekend, that's going to be, you know, Bama has some great talent at wide receiver, but you want them all out there.
Oh, yeah. And just it's so much speed, too, some of those guys. And
yeah.
We were talking to, I think it was Jerry Jeudy this week, and he mentioned that Henry Ruggs once recorded a 24 miles an hour on their catapult system.
Catapult system, yeah.
And he was, I've never done that kind of thing.
Well, don't look at me.
Yeah, don't look at me.
It's like I always laugh when they used to time me with a sundial. So I certainly wasn't out there those kind of speeds. Hey, we were talking before at the start of the show about all the different programs you've worked with. Who was the most colorful coach you have ever covered as a writer?
This guy?
Is it? Yeah. I mean, you've been at Green Bay, you've been with the Cardinals, you've been with the Diamondbacks as a beat writer and so on.
I tell you what, the first coach I covered was someone who I respected a lot, and that was Tony Dungy.
Great man.
Remarkable guy. So
great man.
Yeah.
Really good.
He really is. We have time for one more question, Christopher. Why don't you jump on in?
Sure. And this is kind of something I've always wondered for a number of years. And you know, you've always, it seems like running backs, you know, there's 1, there's 2, there's 3, there's guys getting the ball in different spots and so forth. And I'm wondering how you put that plan together of when you use a guy and how much of it is just situational for the game.
Well, I think it's a combination of both. I think there's different styles of running backs. And, some guys are really good zone runners. Some guys are really good if they run with their shoulders sort of square to the line of scrimmage. Some guys are much better perimeter runners, running sideways, stick their foot in the ground and go north and south. Some guys are really good receivers. Some guys are really good pass blockers. And then there's some combination of all those things that some guys can do. All right, so you try to take and say, okay, we're going to try to make these guys better at the things they're not great at, but we're also going to feature the things that they are really pretty good at, and we're going to run those kind of plays with those kind of guys in the game. So, and it's really not that hard to figure out with running backs. Sometimes a little more difficult to figure out at other positions, but and I think that we have a really good combination of guys. Damian Harris is kind of good at everything. Josh Jacobs is really great perimeter runner, really good on the speed sweeps, but he's gotten a lot better running with his shoulder square. He's got great quickness, and he's developed power in his game and can run behind his pads now. He's a really good receiver. And Najee Harris has got great running ability, but, the other parts, when he doesn't have the ball, it's like Derrick Henry told me, and I think I've probably said this before. We were trying to teach Derrick Henry pass protections when he was a freshman, and he was getting frustrated, and I said, you don't need to get frustrated about this. And he looked at me and he said, Coach, when I played in high school, they didn't teach me any of this stuff. All they did was toss me the ball and I ran with it. So, and most of the great running backs that you have, that's what they did in high school. So these other things that they learn how to play and do without the ball is something that maybe they don't have a lot of background in. So, but anyway, we do have a good combination of guys this year, and hopefully they can stay healthy and continue to be productive.
Coach, as always, this hour has flown right by. It's time for your final word, presented again tonight by Mercedes-Benz. Mercedes-Benz, the best or nothing.
Well, I think, this is a big rivalry game, and I think everybody needs to understand it's a rivalry game, and when there's this much emotion involved in a game, sometimes the outcome is really, really unpredictable. So great preparation by our team, great enthusiasm by our fans and our players and our staff is really, really important in terms of going out and playing the way you need to play, especially on the road. I told the players early in the week, first thing I told them, I said, when you play at Alabama, there's 3 questions you're going to get asked when you leave out of here. What's your record against Tennessee? What's your record against Auburn? And how many championships you win? All right, so how you want to answer those questions the rest of your life, because that's what you're going to have to do. You're going to have to answer them for the rest of your life. So is it worth it to get prepared and go up there and be able to play our best game as football players and make a commitment to each other that everybody's going to take ownership and do that? I thought we took a step forward in that last week, against Missouri. We had to play for 60 minutes. We had to overcome some adversity in the game, and hopefully we'll be able to build on that this week.
You know what I found interesting last week against Mizzou? We had talked on this show and at your luncheon about, they run 90-something plays. Boy, you cut that down to like 60-something plays. Keep that offense off the field. That's the best defense you got going.
Well, and it was, and I thought we controlled the ball a little bit better in the game, last week against Missouri offensively. We weren't as sharp on offense as we have been. I mean, we left a lot of money on the table is the way I say it. If we would have executed things a little better. We had 2 touchdowns called back because of penalties.
Yeah.
We had 7 opportunities in the red zone, and we only converted touchdowns on 3 of them. And some of those were on misexecutions on our part. So there's definitely room for improvement. And I think if our players can stay focused on what they need to do to continue to build on what we did last week and to improve, then I think we can continue to get better.
Well, Coach, travel safely tomorrow. As always, thanks for your time. We'll see you. We'll have a great weekend.
Well, thank you, and I thank everybody and for my birthday cake.
Yes.
And also for the happy birthday song. Thank you so much.
And many more. Many more.